African energy sector is increasingly being seen as a template of successful reform and collaboration between the public and private sectors. According to the BDO South Africa Renewables Report, the country's renewable energy sector is entering a transformative phase, highlighting the benefit of positive policy shifts on economic impact. And joining me to shed light on where the renewable energy sector is and where it's going is Nato Oosthuizen, the head of renewables at BDO South Africa. Thank you so much for your time, Nato. Now, just looking at this renewable energy space, at what level of growth and integration is it, looking at how it fits into the broader energy landscape?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for the time. I think we need to look back at the last couple of years and the investment that has been made in the renewable energy sector in South Africa. And since 2011, there's 292 billion invested in delivering 9.6 gigawatts worth of electricity and capacity within the electricity sector within South Africa. So to say the least, I think in stabilizing the grid in South Africa, renewable energy has played a significant role and is set to play even a bigger role in the future.
A decade of groundwork, you say, in terms of policy. What have been the key policy shifts that have enabled this runway for renewables? And is it a template that can be used for other sectors as well?
I think the biggest impact and transformation that we've seen in the sector from a regulatory perspective is the removing of the licensing threshold that allowed the embedded generation and unlocked private investment into energy generation in the country. Second to that, probably, is the Electricity Regulation Amendment Act, which opened the door to competitive market where companies and municipalities could procure electricity directly from independent power producers. Between those two, I do believe that made a significant shift in the transformation and the growth within the industry in South Africa.
And actually, where are the biggest areas of growth for the renewable energy sector and low-hanging fruits as well?
Yeah, I think the biggest constraint, firstly, is probably our grid capacity that we need to deal with. And after we sorted out the grid constraint and the grid capacity, there's significant large-scale projects that can go online. Just to give an example, in the Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, and Western Cape, the grid capacity is at capacity, meaning that will block the large-scale projects to go and grow the electricity generation of the country. And those electricity generation is obviously not only needed for local use, but also for the development of further technologies, for instance, green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is definitely a frontier and the next frontier in the renewable energy sector market for South Africa. And I do believe that there's significant investment that will come from that if that program can be expanded.
Yeah. And of course, we talk about a just energy transition, right, where it's not just about the energy transition, but that we need to get the just part right. And that also just includes, involving communities as well, in particular communities that were dependent on fossil fuels that now need to pivot to actually get into and be integrated into the renewable energy space. So talk to me about localization here and skills development.
I definitely agree that we can only have just transition if there's skills development. We need to understand, as you mentioned, that in many in the communities, the breadwinners worked in coal mines, and that might transition to something more renewable energy-like. And for that, you need the appropriate skills. So the big companies and the big investors must take this into account. And how we can ensure that this happens is that we build that into the procurement program for the investors and for the independent power producers to ensure that the skills development happen for local communities so that there's longevity and sustainability within job creation in those communities and in South Africa as a whole. There's obviously massive opportunity for employment and growth in employment if we roll out these skills development, especially in manufacturing as well throughout the country, when we look at local content to service the solar and the wind market.
All right. Well, we do have to wrap up the conversation there, but thank you so much for giving us insight into this very, very important topic, Nato. That was Nato Oosthuizen, Head of Renewables at BDO South Africa.